let's continue our talk about 3D shapes, but leave polyhedrons behind. Now we're going to talk about a cylinder. A cylinder is not a polyhedron because it doesn't have polygons as all of its sides or surfaces. So a cylinder has two congruent, simple, closed curves in the parallel planes. It's similar to a prism. We had polygons in our parallel planes, our top and bottom. Now we can have anything that's simple and closed. So we might have shapes like this that are a circle. Then we might have crazy shapes like a cloud. They don't actually have to have a shape type name. And then it's going to be connected by our lateral surface. And the lateral is, again, just our middle. A cylinder can be right if we meet at a right angle. And if we don't, then it's oblique. It's honestly easiest to tell the right and oblique just by looking at the shapes. My first shape is oblique because it's leaning. So I'll call this an oblique circular cylinder. My second shape here is a right circular cylinder because it's standing straight up and down. Again, I think it's easiest not to worry about the definitions, but considering if we're standing straight up and down or if we're leaning. If we're standing straight up and down, my line would go right here. But since that's leaning to the side, it's oblique. Now, with cylinders and cones in just a second, we can have shapes as our bases that we don't know what their name is. So in that case, I'm not going to give it a name. I'm just going to call this a right cylinder. It's right because these laterals meet at 90 degrees. And it's a cylinder because it has the same base on the top and the bottom. Next, we have a cone. And a cone is going to be similar to a pyramid because it's going to have a base and a point instead of two bases. But again, we don't have to have a polygon as our base. We just have to have a simple closed curve and then a point. And just like everything else we've seen, it can be right or oblique. My first example here is a right circular cone. It's right because the apex is right in the middle. It's circular because of the base, and it's a cone because it doesn't have the same base on the top and bottom. Next, I've got oblique because my apex is not in the middle of my base. That's the circular base, and it's a cone. My last shape doesn't have a name for its base, but I know it's right because the apex is in the middle of the base. So I'm just going to call it a right cone. It's not a circular cone because it has this like teardrop shape here. Those are our four basic categories that we're going to use to define our 3D shapes. We have a couple more things to talk about though. First are cross sections, and cross sections are just a visual concept, so we really have to pay attention to what it looks like. Imagine taking a shape, and this is a prism, and cutting it in half, picking up that half and looking to see what it looks like, kind of like a stamp. Back when you were 4, 5, or 6, you made artwork with potatoes and carrots and apples. You would cut them in half, stamp them in paint, and then put them on a piece of paper, and the picture would be the cross section. These are just going to be not as neat as an apple. So if I took this prism and cut it in half, what I would look at when I looked at that cut would be a square. For the second one, this vertical cut, when I would cut down that vertical line, instead of looking at a square, I would have a rectangle as my cross section. The cylinder is a little bit harder to see. Everybody wants all the cylinder's answers to be circle. But if I make this vertical cut, it's not really a circle because that lateral, the thing going around the middle, isn't really a circle. It is a rectangle. Now, if I make a horizontal cut, what I'm left with is a circle. So I've got this rectangle here and a circle on this side. These might be a little bit easier to see in person. So in class, we'll be doing an activity with their nets. And nets are the shapes I have right here. A net is if we were to take our shape, cut along the edges, and fold it down. So instead of it being 3D, it's now 2D. And we want to be able to name the nets. And just like with my other shapes, I'm going to want to use 3 words. The first word is going to be given to all of us. The nets are always going to be right. So they're always a right something. So all these guys are going to have right in their name. Now, if it's a prism, you're going to have two bases that look the same. So we look at this second one. They're my two bases. They go together. My bases on this third one go together. And bases have to come in pairs of two. There can only be two. There can't be more than that. So this first guy doesn't have a group of two. They've got four of these and only one of those. That means it's a pyramid. And pyramids are going to have a whole bunch of triangles. That's going to be their giveaway. The thing that's not a triangle is the base. So that shape is a square. So this is a right square pyramid. You could have any base for a pyramid. We're used to seeing a square or rectangle, but we saw above we could have hexagons and pentagons, octagons. My prisms are going to have a whole bunch of rectangles. So this is a right. I'm not going to go to the rectangles. I'm going to go to that pair of two to name it. So that pair is a triangle. So this is a triangular prism. This third one, whole bunch of rectangles, tells me it's going to be a prism. I'm going to go to the pair. Those are hexagons. All these nets are going to be right. So that's a dead giveaway with these. Now the last one's the weird guy. It's kind of a special one. And it's actually the cone. I've got that circle, and this is going to wrap around. If I had two circles, I would have a cylinder. So it's right. So this last guy here is a right, and it's going to be a circular cone over here on the end. There's my right circular cone.